And we're back. So, in the last couple of weeks and days, it's been brought to my attention that some of you, maybe even a lot of you, miss the long format videos. and I figured, someone specific told me that they love to just put one of my long format videos on. They were rewatching some of my old videos and they like to just put it on in the background. Um, so I figured, you know what? Why don't I just try and share some thoughts and then you guys can tell me whether or not I still got it and it's still relevant and interesting to you or not. Um, as you can probably tell, I didn't prepare anything, and the idea is I told myself to just talk about things that I realized lately, things that I'm thinking about right now, and again, let's see what I come up with. So, first thing I wanted to talk about was how I how my view on feeling ugly, ugliness, and that in in relation to society, how that philosophy of mine has evolved or not. As you all know, I used to care a lot about this in a sense, and I was always coming up with new ways to mentally overcome people judging you or giving you bad looks or how to feel. And I've gotten to a point where, I don't know if you guys can tell, but basically, it was very apparent in the last video I called Rock Bottom, the one I uploaded before this. If you look at my mouth, ever since I basically tried to get my bottom teeth installed, the corner of my mouth got really messed up. Like, it basically was botched. And if you look, like, this part, you really, you can't tell right now, I think, but in terms of like eating, my situation is worse than ever. And what I mean when I say that is like food just literally comes right back out. There's saliva everywhere. The other evening, I was at a neighborhood type of potluck party and I was having some food, and it's just like at some point I thought I was doing a decent job of eating carefully. Like I was having some snacks and I looked down on my jacket and there was just like literally saliva and food all over the front of my jacket, which obviously sucks because there was a bunch of people there and you're like, oh, okay. But that's one of those moments where you do feel like a handicapped person. But the point I'm trying to make is like aesthetically, especially from certain angles, I've probably taken a step back in terms of my mouth and all those things. And I was kind of asking myself the question, how do I feel about that in relation to society and other people? And what I've noticed as I've gotten older, something I've talked about a lot before, is me noticing that people, as they get older, and old people in general, that their feelings are kind of like, or their palette of feelings and their ability to feel and get excited and go through all those different emotions that we have as humans kind of gets lost. It gets numbed down. It's like I always make the comparison with a knife. It gets blunt. Like the older you get, the more blunt you get, like in your ability to really feel certain things. And my theory is that that's why like you see so many old people just being bitter and just unhappy and cold, and because they don't have the ability to feel all those things anymore the way you do as a kid or a teenager, or like even in your 20s. And that's something that I'm also experiencing. Like I can rationally self-diagnose myself, or at least attempt to do so, and tell that I've gotten just a lot more like, if everything was here, and when I say everything I mean everything, it's now here. And I'm just like it's funny because people will tell me, oh, you've gotten more mature. You have a certain calm. And it's true. And I like it. I'm not complaining. But at the same time, I can also tell, like, I used to look at life through a lens of romanticism. Like, I was just a romantic person. And not just when it, as it pertained to love or girls or relationships, just in general. And I definitely feel like that has gone away in my early 30s. I'm turning 35 in 5 months. And it's very interesting for me. And that's also why I want to kind of like document this and put that out there. Because like if you look at like early me, like if you look at the videos I made 5 years ago, especially again, as it pertained to women, I was like, I really used to put women on a pedestal. I would look at them as like these magical creatures that, had... Het tonijn is nog niet groot genoeg. I would look at them as magical creatures. My dad just walked in. On the filming, that's why I made a joke in Dutch saying like the premise is still not big enough. Because we got quite a bit of space here, and the joke is that I went all the way in the back to make this video, and then he still manages to barge in on me and find me. Anyway, so I was saying like, early me was very much like in love with the whole concept of women and just love and all those things, and then at some point along the way I kind of realized that, and this is gonna sound horrible, but I always say like women are just kind of like men but with vaginas, and what I mean by that is that just because a woman is a woman doesn't mean that they're fairies and that they have like that they have more empathy than the average man, or that they're good people, or that they have like a predestined, like faith, or I'm doing a horrible job explaining, but my point is, yeah, they're guys with vaginas. That's really the best way to put it. Like, I remember the first time I really understood that like a woman can be a woman obviously, but then she can basically be a man. Like, and I'm not talking about, I'm not saying they feel like a man. I'm just saying they can have. There's a lot of women out there that have a very masculine energy, and it's not, I'm not talking about society or what. I don't think that's something that, let me be very clear. I don't think this is something that just happened recently due to politics or due to media. Like, I think that's something that's been like that since the dawn of time. I think, and that's something that I had to come to grips with like, women can have a very masculine energy and basically just, again, kind of like be men but in a woman's body, whilst wanting to be a woman. Again, to be clear, complicated time, you gotta watch what I say. And I guess that I wasn't prepared to learn that lesson, and I learned that lesson. And then in time, and in turn, that made me question my energy. Because, a lot of people might consider me to be a classic, like, guy's guy. Because you see me, because I'm lifting weights, and I'm tall, and I'm socially very confident, and I can be the life of the party, and all these things. Like, people have called me an alpha on numerous occasions, even though I kind of cringe at that word, and people just using that term in general. But my point is, that made me question, like, okay, so maybe I have a much more feminine energy. And once you start like seeing it like that, and you kind of like transcend, like these typical stereotypical ideas of people and the purpose of them in your life, that really was a big one for me in my personal development. But also how I, like, all of a sudden, upon realizing that, a big part of my foundation kind of like disappeared, in the sense that I did put a lot of stock into finding that woman and like completing the puzzle, and I did put a lot of stock in like that being the end goal and maybe even the finish line, even though I've stated so many times that there is no such thing as a finish line. But I had to come clean and be honest with myself that I did, whether it was conscious or subconsciously, believed and looked for that. So the point I'm trying to make is, upon realizing that, it took away a lot of the magic out of life for me. And I understand that sounds depressing, but it's not. Like, it doesn't make me depressed. It's nor so like an aha moment where, kind of like when you're a kid and you find out Santa Claus doesn't exist, you know. And that was a big one for me, and one I've been pondering on for the last year. And I know I started off this whole thing by talking about like how has my philosophy about being ugly changed. I promise you I'm getting to my point. And my point is, ever since I've taken, I guess, women off their pedestal, and ever since I've kind of realized that we're all just like people, in different shapes and forms, that we all have baggage and we all have complexities and issues and unattractive traits and toxic traits and all these things, I somehow care less about the way I look, especially like not my body, but like just the face and the lip thing. Because I'm like, the best way I can put it is I think I've developed a feeling of contempt for a lot of people. Where I end up feeling like, why should I, who the hell am I trying to impress? Like, I've quoted, or who the hell am I trying to attract? Or who the hell am I trying to, like, convince that I'm worth it? And it's funny because I've quoted Marcus Aurelius so many times, him saying, it never ceases to amaze me how we care so much about the opinion of others that we don't even respect ourselves. And that one finally, like, it always clicked, but then, like, it really clicked. It really hit home on a different level. And then specifically in my case, as it pertains to me choosing to undergo more surgeries to be more aesthetically pleasing or not. And now I'm just like, why the fuck would I do that? Like, to impress them? Like, that's kind of where I'm at. But then again, I'm also like, I'm wary of becoming like too old too quick and becoming maybe perhaps a little bit bitter, and I don't want to take the easy way out and just be like, I don't want anybody else in my life. Like, I'm just gonna be alone. It's the easiest way. I don't need anyone. Like, I'm still objectively and rationally pretty damn sure that a life is better lived with someone else that can, be there next to you on your journey. So like, I'm trying to balance all that introspection and all those things that I'm basically finding out and figuring out about myself with an active attempt to at least try and remain in striking distance of that magic, those, vision on life. Like, I want to make it active. I don't want to become too logical. I don't want to become too rational, and I then sure don't want to become a person that is just like, like, seen it all, done it all, life is overrated, fuck this shit, like, I think that's a slippery slope, and it's pretty easy to convince yourself, especially under the veil of rationality and applying logic. It's very easy to end up in a very nihilistic point of view where it's just like, like none of this really matters and all of that. So yeah, that's the main thing I learned about me, like, no longer wanting to. No, yeah, I really can't be bothered that much anymore. And I'm at a point where it's kind of like, it's funny because the YouTube thing and my lack of output on YouTube about certain things, like, that's why I got more into the shorts. I almost felt like disrespected in terms of the views I was getting on these longer videos. It really got to a point where I was like, why am I doing this? You know? And I lost track of what matters. Like, what matters is the individuals, the individuals that I reach, and not the numbers to please my ego. So yeah, I say all that to say, this video is an attempt to make that right and to alter, kind of correct the course I've been on. Do I have any other thoughts that I wanted to talk about? Because you guys seem to love long format. If you're still here, I guess you're gonna keep watching all the way through the end. So I talked about that. I talked about, yeah. I think that's about it for today. I think that's good. I'm very curious to see what this next year will bring, and I'll do my best to document as much as I can to bring you guys along with me on this journey. I love the rain. I love it. Just there's something so pleasing about it. It's amazing. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll be back at some point sooner than later. Have a good one. Peace out.